everyone. Thanks for having us today. My name is Kinjal Shah. I'm one of the general partners at Blockchain Capital, where we've been investing in open source technology, blockchains, digital assets for the past decade. And I'm excited to have Rose here with us to talk more about Bluesky.
Thanks, Kinjal. Hi, everyone. I'm Rose. I'm the CEO of Bluesky. And I actually started with Jay on day one when we separated from Twitter as an independent company. And before Bluesky, I was at an AI company called Forethought AI, where I was head of customer experience. And before that, I was trying to popularize cricket flour with snack foods with a company called Chirps. And we were in thousands of retail and online stores.
Amazing. So, Rose, maybe today, just to start high level, you could share what Bluesky is for the folks that might not know, and AT protocol.
Yeah, so in the 2010s, people started to question how much power and control these big tech companies had, and what the people and power would do with this control. And so we had an example, like in 2016, we had Cambridge Analytica, where there were questions about whether Facebook data was being used to create psychographic profiles to create very personalized political ads. And so in 2019, Mike Masnick, who is now our board member, wrote a paper called Protocols, Not Platforms. And his big idea was, how do we shift power away from these centralized, corporate-owned entities that basically controlled how content is distributed and moderated, to a more decentralized open system, which is basically just this open system that any developer can build on top of, and then users actually have the freedom to choose which service or what platform they preferred. And this idea really caught on with Jack Dorsey, and he wanted to decentralize Twitter. And so in 2019, he kicked off Project Bluesky within Twitter. And after about a year and a half, he, Parag, and others chose Jay Graber, who's our CEO and founder, to lead Project Bluesky. And when Jay spoke to engineers about Bluesky, they're like, this is awesome, I'm super into this. But then when she talked to the ads team's like, wait, so you're trying to get people to leave the feed that we make money off of? And she realized, okay, if I'm trying to build a decentralized protocol within a centralized company, there's a chance that this never sees the light of day. So she asked Jack, can we separate out as an independent company? And Jack agreed. So in December 2021, we split off, we became our own company, and of course, many things changed after that. And so with Bluesky, what we then built was our own app, which is some combination of like a subreddit Twitter interaction model. And on this app, we've now now we have over 35 million users after just 14 months of public open. And to give you some context on that, to give you a comparison, Twitter reached about 1 million users in their first year, and Instagram sold to Facebook at 30 million users for about $1 billion. And so this new era of social hasn't really happened in a really long time. And this is made possible because we're focused on user choice and developer freedom, because Bluesky is built on top of the AT protocol, the AT protocol, as you mentioned, which is a technology we built that's the underlying foundation technology layer that enables Bluesky to give people choice and also lets any developer build on top of. And it's this open protocol that guarantees openness and freedom of building.
Yeah, I love that. And I think one of the things that initially drew me to Bluesky and draws so many users is this power, or this promise of a non-toxic social platform, something I think we definitely can agree we need. And so maybe, Rose, you can share some stories or examples from users where they have found value in the Bluesky network today.
Yeah, so as I mentioned, these centralized platforms have so much power. They decide what you see, what you don't see, what gets taken away. And then the other problem here is that the end user they're really trying to serve is advertisers. And so what becomes the incentive is, how do we lock in users in this one algorithm of an endless scroll where they're promoting either the most polarizing post or the biggest brands? And then users are left feeling quite unhappy, locked in this endless scroll experience. And so we wanted to change this dynamic. And one of the ways we've done this is anyone can create a feed, not just us. And so now on Bluesky, there's over 100,000 different feeds that users have created, from Swiftie feeds to cat feeds. And what's so cool about these feeds is that they're more community driven. And I want to double tap into one of my favorite ones, which is the science community, the science feed on Bluesky. It was actually started by two scientists, and they created a feed that basically is now a science magazine because they choose what posts get to be on there. And they've chosen oceanographers, zoologists to go and decide what gets curated on this feed. This has now attracted so many scientists all over the world that there are more scientific papers shared on Bluesky than X in 2025. So it's not just, of course, distribution, right? Feeds that matter. It's also moderation. And the other side of so for moderation, it's the other side of content, which is what gets taken away. And on Threads, here's an example where when they first launched, they decided for the entire network, we don't want to see political content, which means you don't get to see political content either. We decided rather than we make that choice, we want users to make that choice. And so what we've provided is tools for users to go create labelers. And so a user has created a US politics labeler that goes through and labels every US politics post within the network. And if you subscribe to this labeler, then you can choose to hide or show US politics depending on time of day, your mood. And so what we believe is that if we can actually give users the choice and move towards a community-owned, community-driven space, that's how we're going to get healthier information systems. But also, it's what allows people to actually find each other, have cozy corners, feel belonging again, have fun again.
I love that promise for users. Maybe shifting gears, Rose, to the other side, which is the developers. So could you speak to developers and what they're building on App Protocol today and how that ecosystem looks?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, anyone can build on top of this underlying foundation that we've built. And what's been really cool is, yes, there are these 100,000 different feeds that people have created, these moderation labels, but on top of it, users have created whole separate apps that have received funding on their own. Graze Social is a feed builder that brands like Netflix or NPA will use, and they've raised $1 million on their own, and that's really exciting. We also have apps like Flashes and Skylight, which are basically like the Instagram and TikTok of our atmosphere or our network. And what's really cool about that is they get to pull in all the video content, all the image content that's already on the network that 35 million people have already started posting, so they're not starting over from scratch. And so these are the experiences we're seeing pop up. And not only is it these different apps, but different countries. Like Japanese users are one of the largest groups of users on Bluesky, and they build their own clients and apps to go and use the Bluesky network. And so this is the open world, is we've given you kind of a toolbox. Go and build and see what you can do with it.
I love that. It's so open. And I think in the past 14 months, we've seen tremendous growth. I'm curious if you could speak to maybe some of the features that you guys are thinking about prioritizing and just how you think about incentivizing behaviors on the network and on Bluesky specifically.
Yeah, I think the thing that we do well at Bluesky is we observe, we learn, and then we amplify. And so one of the things that we've observed is a lot of the growth that has come from the world is actually community-driven. We've spent almost no money on outbound marketing, and that's kind of the dream. And so what we've observed is you have 1 to 2 community leaders who are really excited about Bluesky, and they want to bring their community here. And so what we do is we empower them with tools and resources where then they go and onboard and educate their community members about how Bluesky works. And one of my favorite stories here is the NFL community. We have a ton of NFL fans on Bluesky. In fact, on Super Bowl day, I think all engagement metrics 2x'd. But it all came from one person, Mina Kimes, who's an NFL analyst. She loves Bluesky, and she single-handedly brought all these users on by creating a starter pack, which is a feature we have on Bluesky that basically lets you curate a list of people to follow and feeds to follow. And when you get a link or a QR code to onboard to Bluesky with that starter pack, you actually get that curated onboarding experience rather than the default Bluesky onboarding experience. So you immediately find your community. And so Mina has brought over all these NFL folks, and the people on her starter pack can sometimes get like 10, 20,000 followers overnight because they're just featured and people use her starter pack to log into Bluesky. But it's not just the communities that we're really excited about. Another big thing on Bluesky is that we don't downrank links because Bluesky is all about opening up to the open web, linking all these experiences together. And this is huge for creators and publishers who for so long have been working for the algorithm, working on rented land for landlords who don't care about them. Take Hank Green, for example. He's a stand-up comedian, and oftentimes he's working for the algorithm, shitposting, making really funny memes, and those posts get tons of engagement. But the moment he wants to send people off to a stand-up comedy show and link people to that ticketing platform, that post will only get a few likes and very few reach because he's trying to take people off of the platform. That's a horrible experience for creators. And so for Bluesky, because we're not reliant on a centralized experience and trying to trap people in, we really want people to go out into the web and use Bluesky as kind of that lobby of discovering, well, what's happening in all these annexes across the social web. And so we're really excited to continue to build upon this link experience. And one of my personal goals is how do we become one of the best link experiences across the web?
Yeah, and I think it's increasingly, I mean, we're seeing this across all of our platforms, but there's just an inundation of links, of news, of noise. And so finding a place where you can actually get discovery and distribution, I think is increasingly important, not just for users, but for businesses and their livelihood, really.
Absolutely.
So I guess maybe shifting gears, one of the big sort of considerations of centralized platforms over the past 20 years has been network effects and really accruing these network effects to their social graph. As you guys think about Bluesky gaining scale and adoption, how do you position that with at protocol gaining a lot of this momentum in the broader ecosystem versus Bluesky itself?
It's really hard to imagine what an open world looks like when we've lived in a closed world for so long. And we got a little bit of a hint of this when Threads launched and 100 million people joined on day one. How were they able to do that? They bootstrapped off of Instagram's social graph, right? And all those users came over. But that experience is only open to Meta and closed to everyone else. Well, what Bluesky is doing is basically making that experience available to anyone building on top of the Bluesky network. And so you're tapping into 35 million users and all the content that they've created. And so what's really amazing, so I want to talk a little bit about Flashes and Skylight, the two apps I had talked about before. So if you think about Instagram, it's basically bigger image, smaller text compared to Twitter posts. What's TikTok? Videos in an endless long video scrolling feed, right? And so at the end of the day, it's the same data. And what we're excited about is, okay, you can have all these other types of experiences, but you can leverage the data that's already been created. And so when Flashes and Skylight first launched, what's amazing is one, both teams are like 1 or 2 engineers outside of the Bluesky team. After a few weeks, they launched this Instagram, TikTok experience, and they got over 100,000 users on each of these different platforms in their week 1. And they didn't have to start from scratch with no content on the network. They were able to bootstrap off of all the content that I had, my videos, my images. And so the first time I logged into those apps, all my 100,000 followers, all my data, whether that's image data or video data, came with me, and I didn't have to start over. And so what's really cool, though, is the content then that's developed or posted to Flashes and Skylight, the Bluesky app, that's more of this subreddit Twitter interaction model, also gets to tap into. So we have this completely new paradigm of what it means to have users and this open shared ecosystem. So we don't just think about growth in terms of growth on the Bluesky app. We think about growth across the entire ecosystem because we're all helping each other grow the pie.
I love that vision. I think it's also really telling that Bluesky has created such an open community for developers to really come in and foster this growth together, and it kind of compounds over time. I guess maybe a parting question, or just a question to zoom out a little bit. If you were to wave a wand today and change something about social, what would that be, and how is Bluesky kind of building towards that future?
With closed APIs, what's basically happened is that innovation has just halted in social. And if you remember experiences like Zynga, TweetDeck, Block Party, these were all third-party developer apps that were built alongside these ecosystems. But as soon as the parent company decided, okay, these other experiences are going to be competitive, they shut down their APIs, and then these businesses basically shut down overnight. And so what's ended up happening is that social online then becomes a destination. I'm going to go here to have a social experience, which is not at all how we have social offline, which is basically social is a layer upon everything we do. What we eat, what we listen to, who we date. And if that layer were open to everyone online, what type of experiences would happen? What type of innovation would happen if every developer had access to an open social graph, an open interest graph that they could layer upon whatever else they want to go build? And so we're just super excited to have a locked open infrastructure system that's also open source that we can never shut down. Don't trust us, trust the infrastructure. And then we would love to see, OK, with the innovation of users, creators, devs, all building and these experiences can talk to each other, what does the next era of social look like?
I love that. Maybe last thing, if anyone in the crowd wanted to try Bluesky today or learn more, where should they go? How can they find Bluesky?
Great question. Well, I should have had a starter pack QR code behind me. But you could go to the App Store and just look up Bluesky Social, download it. We're on the Play Store, the iOS. We're also a desktop app. So go check it out. And I hope to see you guys on the skyline.
Thank you so much, Rose. Thanks, everyone.